Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to cover the JavaScript portion of our background changer code along, right? In the last one, we had made something like this, where the CSS was all completed and our buttons were all added. But the thing that we needed to add now was these random colors plus the functionality of these buttons, right? So we can start with that now, and all of that is going to be done through JavaScript. So first thing that we need to do is we need to add this script tag in here, right? By script source index.js, and now we can start doing our basic JavaScript coding. So first thing, we are going to change some property of all of these divs, right? These are divs by the ID of color box, by the class of color box. So we need to have these divs as variables in our JavaScript too. So first thing we'll do is we'll select them, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do const boxes document.query selector all, and inside here I'll say dot, and this is color box, right? Color box. Now what's this const thing? It's basically the same as var, right? The functionality will be same, but whenever you're using something that you're not changing, like the value of boxes will not change. It will always point to these 6 divs right here. So in your JavaScript, it's always said that you should give const to these kind of things. Const stands for constant, and it's the same thing as the variable, except their value will not change in the program flow, right? They will always refer to the same thing which they are doing here. So that's why I've used const. Next is our colors array, right? So now we need the colors which we need to fill into this, right? So we are going to generate those random colors inside the JavaScript only, and I'll do in a function, and I'll get it in an array named colors, right? And I'll do that in a function named get random colors, which we haven't made yet, but we can make now, right? So I can do function get random colors, right? So now we need to get 6 random colors and return them from this particular function, right? So how do we do that? So the way we're going to get that is through the RGB method. We're going to get the RGB values because we can simply generate 3 random numbers between 0 and 255, and we can make a string for RGB, and then we can just return that back. I'll show you what I mean. So first of all, we need a var colors in here. So now this array will get a lot of new things, so that's why we will make it var, right, and not const, because it does not have a constant value of an empty array throughout the program run. So I'll get var colors and empty array, right? And this colors is basically the colors for this particular function. This will not affect this if you remember the scope. And this is the same as saying this as C, right? There's no difference. And this colors and this colors are not the same. This is the colors inside the get random colors function, and this is the colors outside the get random colors, which is the variable that we can use anywhere in the program, right? So now we need to do is we need to generate 6 colors. So first of all, we'll need a loop that runs 6 times. So I'll get var equal to 0, I is less than 6, plus plus I, right? So now this is a loop that will run 6 times, and what we can do in here is, I'll do the steps. First is generate red, green, blue values, then make RGB string, add that to colors array, right? So these are the things that we need to do. First, we'll generate the 3 values. So let's say var, this could also be const, but let's do var red is equal to, and we'll do our normal thing, that math dot floor math dot random star 255. So this will give us a value between 0 to 255, right? And we need a similar value for green and blue too. So what I will do is, this is blue and this is green. So now we have our 3 variables which are referring to our red, green and blue values. And now we have to make our string in the form RGB, red, green, blue, right? This is the form that our RGB should be in. And when we are making this through JavaScript, we need to have one thing in mind, that these spaces are actually really important, otherwise this would not work, right? This is how this is supposed to be. Alright, so now let's make our string, and I'll name my string color. So that we can simply do a string concatenation. Let's say RGB bracket plus red plus comma space plus green plus comma space plus blue plus bracket close, right? So now our color is a string of this form, right? RGB, red, green, blue. And if you remember, whenever we are setting some property inside JavaScript, we need to give the property value. Like if we are doing something like background color is equal to, then we need to give it inside strings, right? So this is how this is helpful, that our RGB value here is already in the form of a string, and we'll store that like that inside this. And so what we can simply refer to is colors I, for the ith index, right? Alright, so this is our RGB string, and we can simply do colors dot push color. So this should run 6 times, and after this, let's just first, as this is a little complex thing for you, let's just do console.log colors. Now if I go back here and I refresh my page and I inspect, I go to the console, I can see that I have an array which is an RGB which has random values, right? I refresh, these random values change, but they are still valid RGB values, and this is what we were aiming to generate, right? So we can remove this, and instead what we need to do is return colors, right? And so this color should also be the same now. Let's log this too. I refresh, I go to my console, I see my array. It's a proper RGB formatted array, and we can use this to give colors to our site. Alright, so now we have our array ready, and what we need to do is we need to assign the colors to these boxes, right? For that, what we need to do is we need to iterate over these boxes array and assign the background color as colors here, right? So I'll do that through for loop. So now there are 6 boxes, so I'll do I less than 6. And now what I need to do is boxes I dot style dot background color is equal to colors I, right? And what we've simply done is that the ith box should have a background color of ith index of this colors array. So now if I refresh, I should expect to see random colors, and I do, and they change at all times. So this functionality is added too. Now the only thing we need to add is the functionality for these buttons, right? Let's start with that. So now first of all, to do that, we will have to actually select a lot of things. First, we're changing the color of the body, so we need to select the body. We're changing the color of the jumbotron, so we need to select the jumbotron. And we are using these buttons, so we need to select these buttons too, and this button separately, this separately, because the event listener for this will be different from the event listener from this, right? So let's select all of them, and again they are not changing, so I'll do const body is equal to document dot query selector body. And the next we can do const jumbotron document dot query selector dot jumbotron, right? So this will select our body and our jumbotron. Now we need our buttons, so what I can do is const, I'll name this background buttons for the buttons that are changing the background. That will be document dot query selector all, and in here we need to give dot background, right? Because as we can see in this HTML, our buttons that are changing the background have a class of background, right? So these are all the buttons that need to change the background. And if I do this, the Jumbotron buttons now has all the buttons that need to change the Jumbotron, because you can see that the buttons that are changing the Jumbotron have a class of Jumbo, and that's what we are selecting here. So just to be sure, we can actually print these to the console that we've not made any silly errors. And now if I refresh the page and I inspect, I go to the console, I see there are two node lists with 6 elements which have 6 buttons each, right? Right, so now our buttons are getting selected correctly. I can remove these console logs, right? So now what we need to do is add event listeners to all of these buttons, right? And there are 6 buttons each in each of these, we know that. So we can make a separate for loop for that, or we can do it inside this loop itself, because this loop is running 6 times, right? So what we'll do is background buttons I dot add event listener, click function, and one thing that inside this function you need to have event as an argument. And I hadn't shown you this before because this you wouldn't have gotten the use of this, and it would just be that you need to have this. And now you are actually going to see the use of this, because we're going to log this to the console and we're going to use this just in a moment. So you'll get to know why this is passed, but this event is passed to this callback function by default inside an event listener, right? And this will contain all the info about the event, as we'll see. So for now, you can just see that you need to add a function event here, right? And inside here, now we have to change the color of the body, right? So you might think body dot style dot background color is equal to colors I, right? And this is actually a tricky part in this code, that this will not work. If I go back here, so what I'll do from now is I'll do console dot log colors I 2, right? And now if I refresh my page and let's say I click on this button, I see I get undefined here, plus this does not work, even though I've done body.style.background color. Now why is that? I'll just do plus space plus I here, and that will help you understand this much better. Now if I do this, I see I is 6, and 6 is the place that this loop is terminating. So how is this actually happening, right? So the point is that we are adding this event listener at the time of this loop where I, colors I, has a valid value. But the point is that when this event is triggered, at that time this loop is already finished, right? And then I is 6. So when this event is triggered, the value of I is seen to be 6. What that basically means is that we see the value of I not when we are setting the event listener, but when it is triggered, right? When we are setting, the value of I is the correct one. But when the event is triggered, this loop has been terminated already and I is equal to 6, right? So we are trying to access colors 6 in here, right? And that is why this is not working. So this actually took me a little time to figure out too, but you need to actually access the background color of its parent, right? So what we can do is we can access the background color of its parent, because it's evident we cannot use the colors array in here, because by the time this event will be triggered, the I loop will already be finished, and hence we will not be able to access the proper index, because we don't know which index the button has been triggered on, right? And if, like, one thing you could do is you could do this dot background color. And what that actually does is it takes the background color of the object which the event listener is on. So basically it will take the background color of this particular button, but we cannot expect this to work because when we are hovering over this, the background color is green, right? So I'll remove this too. So how will we actually get to this? And that is where we get our event, this event thing handy. So I'll just log this to the console first and let's see what this actually contains. And just so you know, this is how I actually figured out this by myself. I logged this to the console and that helped me figure out how to do it. So I see this is my event. First of all, you can see this event object contains a lot of details about my particular click. Is trusted true, screen X meaning the X coordinate on which I clicked, screen Y means the Y coordinate on the screen on which I clicked, and so on, blah blah, a lot of things there. And you can see it has a lot of details, right? So what I went into was path. Basically, the path from the HTML element, like you can see window is the head of the document too, inside which we have the document, then we have the HTML, then we have the body, then we have the container, then we have the row, then we have the column, and then we have this, color box, inside which we have the button. So what I thought was, what if we can simply access the background color of this particular color box, right? That would work, right? Because that would give us the background color of the box containing this button, which is what we actually need, right? So you can see that would always be referred to by path 1, right? First index of the path inside the event. So let's just log event dot path 1. Now again, if I refresh and I press this, I get this div right here, right? And of course, this is coming out to be pure HTML, but what we can do is console dot dir. And now if I refresh, I click this, I get my color box here. Inside this, I can go to style, right? And inside this, I can see that my background color has the RGB value that I'm looking for. And that is how I did that. So what we can do is event.path1 will give us the containing div, like the containing color box for this particular button, right? And then we can do event.path1.style.background color, and we can log that to the console. Let's see what happens. And we get the correct value. Here if I press, I get the correct value, and so on. I can get the value in any of them, right? So this is how we can reach the particular color. Event contains all the info about the particular click. Then path, inside the event path array, contains all the elements which are the parents of this particular background button. The first index of that contains the immediate parent of this background button. Inside that, we went into style and got the background color. So we are getting the background color of its containing div, right? So now what we can do is, instead of logging this to the console, we can set body dot style dot background color is equal to this, right? And now if I refresh, I should expect to see this work, and this does work, right? Excellent. And now that we've done this, it will not be a really big task to actually do this for the Jumbotron too. We can just duplicate this once, and we can change this to Jumbotron buttons. And inside here again, we'll do event.path1.style.background color. That's fine. But the only thing is we want to change the background of the Jumbotron. And now if I refresh, I see this works for the background, this works for the Jumbotron. And I can do that for all of these here, and they work excellent, right? So this is all the functionality that we need in our page, right? This was our page, this is our page, and they are working exactly similarly. As soon as I press on something, the functionality is being implemented too, right? And this is what we were aiming for. And I refresh, I get random colors. I can set that as background, or I can set that as Jumbotron, right? All right. So now we can see that by this amount of JavaScript, this amount of CSS and this amount of HTML, we were able to make something like this. And now if you've made this, then you have actually got a good enough idea of all the kinds of JavaScript that you might need to use. You can now be comfortable with JavaScript, right? You can be confident that I can implement anything with JavaScript, because this is kind of the best you could do with the basics, right? Event listeners and iterating over loops, and adding different events, different buttons in the same loop. So you have actually done a good amount of JavaScript now, and if you ever need something that you don't know, you can simply Google it and you will find that easily, right? That is actually what you should do. Plus, you always have things that, this event, you can always figure that out by yourself, that what I showed you was not just to show you, this was actually what I did when I was stuck there myself. I was trying to do colors eye in here, and that was not working. So then it took me some time to figure out that this was, when this was happening, the value of I was more than 5, and hence the colors I was undefined. Then I logged this event because I thought something would be in here. I thought this path, then I logged that, I styled, background color. I then figured this out by myself. And this is the kind of thing that you need to do sometimes too, because, and trust me, this took me a lot of time. It's not that I figured it out in like 5 minutes as I've showed you here, but it did take me a lot of time, and hence such things always tend to take a whole lot of time, but in the end you can finish them, right? So here we have used all the concepts. We have used selecting, we have used modifying, we have used loops, we have used functions, and we have used event listeners, and modifying the styles here too. Inside this, we have selected all our classes. We have added the hover effect. We have added a really complex selector, and we have added our HTML perfectly too. And hence we have implemented this whole background changer thing, and this is something you can be proud of, right? Alright, so that's it for JavaScript, like the raw JavaScript and front end for now. We'll get to jQuery and we'll finish that really quick. But as for the raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, this is it. Now you know all of that. Congrats. And yeah, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the